Philosophical concepts like phenomenology are very attractive for designers. The phenomenology tradition explores the nature of human experience in the concrete phenomena of daily life, the things themselves. It embraces direct experience in open and dynamic environments, emphasizing that life and the world are deeply intertwined and that meaning emerges in interaction. Pertinent to the philosophy is that the world, as directly experienced, is hardly determinable. It is of an ambiguous and transforming nature. Within the phenomenological tradition, acting is placed before thinking, contrary to thinking before being. It embraces the unique, dynamic, and bodily relation people have with products and systems they engage with. The interaction design discipline draws upon this philosophical position as it concerns itself, too, with how users engage with products, with how they act, feel, and make sense in the world. However, it remains unclear how phenomenology can be seen as compliant with the established science paradigm. The panel discussion will focus on the new insights and differences for design.
Okay, thank you very much. The audience is already there, so I'm still waiting for the two panelists. Okay, we have three panelists today. Yeah? These two gentlemen, I will introduce you shortly, and then you as the audience. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us here. Pertti, that's your chair.
This one?
No, this one.
This one.
This one.
No, the problem is that I don't hear you.
Okay, then you mean you have to hear me but not him?
Oh,
Please,
I want to hear him, not you.
No, please have a seat. Okay, I will shortly introduce the reason why we came up with this idea to have this discussion or this topic on table. A long time ago, or at least a couple of years ago, we had a colleague who passed away. It's Kees Overbeek, and he was our chair for design. And some of us still know him or have a memory about him. And he was very much intrigued by Merleau-Ponty, the French philosopher. He was utilizing on the concept of phenomenology. In the movie you have seen, it was mainly referring back to Heidegger. I have the pleasure to introduce two gentlemen. This is Jelle Stienstra, and he is PhD student, and your supervisor is Caroline.
Yes.
And
Bart Hengeveld.
And Bart Hengeveld. And he is doing his PhD work.
My
close to the end, yeah?
It's close to the end.
Okay, then say something here.
My PhD is about the consequences of phenomenology on designing. If you take a phenomenological classes, you're looking at design. I'm looking at what that could impact on the way of doing design, how people could interact with products that are designed from this perspective, and what kind of tools and methods could fit with this different approach and looking at the world than we are used to. So that's, in a few words, what I'm trying to do in my thesis.
Okay.
So, and I'm doing this through actually doing design. So I'm making prototypes, making products, and I'm trying to do this from this kind of radical stance in my doing.
Okay, thank you very much. The second panelist is Pertti Saariluoma. He is a professor for cognitive science at the University of Jyväskylä in Finland. He is a specialist in thinking and human mind, and he was so polite and so kind to take the position of challenging the people who believe in phenomenology as the ultimative and only way to do design research or design. Would you like to say something about yourself as well?
Well, phenomenology is not totally aligned to me at all, because my first academic job, I was a research assistant for that time leading Finnish phenomenologist. It was very short job actually, and then I moved over to other things. But this Matthias challenge, so to say, it gave me possibility to think that why I'm not, or actually in which respect I'm not a phenomenologist, and I think I'd like to challenge you in this way, and I have, of course, taken flight ticket for tomorrow morning so that I can get back if this goes too difficult, I mean.
Okay, you mean if we are getting too hostile to you, then you have an escape route here, yeah?
Okay.
No, I mean, some of you have seen the movie. I have seen the movie the second time today. Is somebody here who has seen the movie already? So, second time as well? Some of you? For me, I discovered new things, and actually what I found out was that this kind of setting is kind of, in conflict or in contradiction with the message of the movie. If the movie not at all is a contradiction in itself, I mean, we should act in the world and do something together instead of sitting here and talking, kind of. My first question to both of you would be, what is your view on phenomenology beyond or this movie or the message in the movie?
Okay. To me, the movie places phenomenology or being in the world in a very in an uncomfortable way, that it looks like you can only be in the world if you're an expert, if you're really skillful, engaged with things you're doing. And I like to believe that actually in all the things that I'm doing, with my limited skills, I'm still engaged. So for me, this movie is kind of pointing as if it's a higher way of living, phenomenology, which to me I think it's for everyone, and it's to me phenomenology is not about that you are seeing the world from a objective point of view. That meaning is in yourself or in the world, but that's something that emerges through your interaction, through that you have a body, and that's maybe where Merleau-Ponty extends a bit further on Heidegger. It's actually that the skills that you have and what you can do with your body has a relationship with the creation of meaning. So I felt that you saw those professionals skillfully playing with their instruments and being engaged with sports. But what is difficult to see in a movie is that it you're observing it and you don't really feel what they are feeling. And to me, there is something that was said in the beginning of the movie. Phenomenology opens space for feelings that you cannot express in words. It acknowledges that there are things that are not to be rationalized, or that are difficult to be rationalized, and that phenomenology acknowledges that you actually know things with your hands, know things with your body, and for me that's the reason what it appeals to me for design, is that even though in designing I definitely do think about what I'm doing, sometimes I can also rely on my skill that I develop and have a feeling whether something is good or whether something can get better without being able to put it into words or rationally think about it. So that's what I would like to start with.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have a particular opinion about phenomenology? I mean, you're supposed to challenge or to argue against. I mean, if everybody agrees that phenomenology is the only one, and this poor gentleman.
Well, from my point of view, the film, had of course a lot of strong points in concretizing some type of phenomenology, but I would like to concentrate on troubles, for the reason that it is my role in this discussion. So one thing is that actually they discussed a lot about things, mystifying them very much. They forgot totally one of the key issues in Heidegger, which is everyday life, and they wanted to rise things which we know very much actually. They wanted to rise them in the sense that they are very mystical. I had a little bit feeling that there was a sort of underlying all or nothing logic, which I always have felt very problematic. But I mean that they don't want to say that we actually know a lot about skills, and there are a lot about very natural things. For example, this Flossbury flop. I'm not specialist in high jump, but I have understood that the key issue is that actually in that style you need much less movements than in the other style. And if you think the standard ergonomics of the 50s, for example, what was more important in that than to eliminate extra movements, for the reason that the more movements you have to do, the greater probability it's that you make errors. And because of that, the style is good. The rest of the sports phenomena, they can be analyzed much more accurately if you have a sports specialist who can do that. But one thing I would like to remind is this example about German and South American soccer, because I think that if somebody happened to see Brazil and German match, which we saw with Matthias because we were in the same conference, it doesn't really say that South Americans, the Germans, rule following soccer, whatever that can mean, that really is, the big issue. The thing is that film often, uses very everyday, even stereotypes, to discuss things that we know a lot. And this is one of the problems why I don't like so much to be a phenomenologist. For example, phenomenology is very subjective. It means that it's my phenomena which I analyze, and there is nothing wrong. But if I have to design technologies for old Chinese ladies, I'm not sure that by analyzing that how I feel and what are the spatial characteristics or what I should do, that they really have relevance to her. This is why I think that we have to use objective research and use traditional psychology and traditional psychological thinking. In this way, we have reached a lot of understanding about skills, but I can tell that later on. This is just to say to raise the first issues that instead of saying that we can't discuss these issues, we should actually acknowledge that we can get a lot in this way, and every step forward is step forward. Of course, perhaps this is the last example. Everyone knows that any person being in the best possible medical hospital in the world, with best possible medical doctors, eventually will die. It's clear. But it doesn't mean that if those good medical doctors are able to lengthen life, let's say, 15 years, that is a big issue, even though they can't prevent anybody from dying. And this is why we should not look that if everything is not understood, then nothing is understood. That is a wrong idea.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't like the movie. I like the movie and I don't like the movie because the movie is, for my taste, has a strong American touch, in which I prefer to be a continental European, and So, but it's the best I could find. I mean, if someone of you has a better introduction into the topic, then I would love to hear. But this was the message, to a certain extent, was also conveyed in the way that being in the world and acting in the world and doing something with your environment, in which the situation in which you are, is of utmost importance. It's maybe the only thing we have. And in the same sense, there is a way to look to our situation and our thrownness, and our dependencies and our way to act. And for me, and this is why I feel personally challenged by phenomenology, it puts a huge amount of responsibility on my own actions. I mean, if the only thing we have, then that's what I could easily escape in the past, by separating myself from the environment and even from my own actions, and then I'm running out of or having less burden in feeling the responsibility.
What I noticed about the documentary, although I liked the link between theory, philosophers, and kind of everyday wise people, you could say, it was a very white Western male perspective. There was not one female philosopher. There was not one philosopher from the East, for example. And I find it totally crazy as well. If you're talking about phenomenology, I am a Vipassana meditator, which means the Buddha, he was a guy that got enlightened because he meditated a lot. He wasn't a god, and he found a certain amount of liberation. Whether it's true or not, whether he actually exists, I don't find interesting. What I know is that it works in the sense that Buddhism is about getting a certain amount of awareness and about awareness of your sensations, basically, and thus your interaction with the world becomes also much more realistic and empathic. For my understanding, this is also very phenomenological, although I don't understand the philosophical term completely. But I think it's interesting for you also as a PhD student to think about that, because what I find is that it's so heady, everything. It's, the head is here for them. Those philosophers, they're here, they're not here in their whole body or something. There's something, they are in certain situations in Harvard, whatever, where they have the possibilities to proliferate themselves. But if they're actually wise, I'm doubtful.
Would you like to? I thank you very much. I fully appreciate what you said. And okay.
Well, I think that was the point, Matthias. I mean, it's a very selective film.
Okay, wait a moment. I will. If more people shows up, then I try to keep the. You just started talking, and then next.
Okay, so
will come.
I just want to contribute to that. I also agree that the movie is really about the Western perspective. But they also show that
Male.
And male. Yeah, you also said Western.
It's even worse, no?
You start. You make the link between phenomenology and Buddhism.
Yeah.
And I know that you, Matthias, also mentioned Taoism in some of your writings.
Yeah.
And I also see a strong link between phenomenology and Taoism.
Yep.
Because it's about like accepting the nature of things as they are, without like putting them in analytical boxes or whatever. And so it might be interesting to explore this link further. But I just had a question about the discussion. Is it about like phenomenology as a general stand, or about the specific relationship and use for design?
I mean,
well, normally
I will come back to Jylle.
Okay.
Okay, Jelle, answer this. I mean, simple. You should say yes.
Yes, I should say yes. No, for me, I think we are here most of us are designers, and we have an interest in using theory or philosophy as an inspiration for that. So to me, this movie highlights some elements that are important to me. I also recognize that, well, those people talk, and philosophy is about talking, but they talk about doing and they talk about feeling, which they try to show with the musicians and the sporters. But as a designer, I think that you are trained, you're educated with your intuition, and you're actually growing skills to make decisions on products. And what this movie, I think, wants to say is that you can have those skills. You're not always able to put them into words. But when you're engaged and when you grow your skills, you at a certain moment you can count on them. And the more you engage with your product, the more you engage with your tools and with your methods. At a certain moment, you don't have to rationalize about it. You don't have to make decisions on very well-defined, structured things, but you make your decisions on your gut. And at a certain moment, that might be fruitful or not. But I can understand that from other perspectives, this gut feeling that is not just there, but it's actually grown by doing. Maybe it's not accepted as the right way.
Would you like to respond?
Yes.
immediately?
Well,
The reason I ask it is because I see like a difference between phenomenology as being a sort of more ethical way of being, as you describe it, as it also is sort of stated in the movie, and a more practical way of dealing with things, like in terms of design, that you can become a better designer if you use phenomenology in a sense. And I see that's two different questions.
What does it help the carpenter to know about phenomenology? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He's still a really good carpenter. You know? It's also
You mean we should stop talking here? Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean,
I think what she meant is that if you argue like that, a gut feeling, then why don't we just stop discussing and be a carpenter?
this is a mystification, point from Pertti, no?
Yeah, well, phenomenology, the standard idea is that you study phenomena. It means your own experience. And that means, for example, you study your own conscious experience. And this is the problem. I said that one problem with phenomenology is that actually, what was it? Old male Western conscious experience of the world is not necessarily the same that young, European female experience and so on. So it's very difficult to. This is why I myself like to see these things so that we have to study what people are like, real people, what they are like, and what is their life like, and from my point of view, because I represent human technology in the human technology interaction design, the human side, because people believe that people have something to do with technology. Actually, they use and buy and so on, and so they are important. So this is the way. But we can't infer what people are like from our mind, so just from our own experiences. It's good source. Perhaps I could use one Karl Popper's idea here. Popper said once that there are two ways in science, and probably also in design. And one thing is that you invent something. Another thing is that you prove that it is true. So using many phenomenological concepts like everyday life, for example, or gut feeling or whatever, you can invent something that is important. But you have to also prove it. You have to see and be certain that this really works. Because if you think everybody knows here something like Angry Birds, I think. Most people know it. The company made 70 games before that one, and they have not made a single success after that. You know, this doesn't look, you know, like that the designers had really a good capture about what is happening around. And this is the problem I see in very phenomenological approach, which the kind of phenomenological approach that you just think yourself. If you have played all your life, you know, computer games, you probably once get a hit because, you know, this is a good feeling and so. But that is not the way you can do you know, hit after hit after hit. And yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is still valid your question, or?
No, it's just, I think it was sort of following on from the comment about the cultural bias of the film. I think, in some ways I wonder why we're asking this question. Because there is, if you know the context with Herbert Dreyfus and Terry Winograd and Paul Dulrich and Steve Harrison and Phoebe Senkers, there's a clear sort of series of conversations that then phenomenology lands, particularly in interaction design, as being something of interest. But if you actually look at what it's brought in, there are other sources. And I think the risk is of just focusing on phenomenology, that you're missing a whole range of other relevant traditions. So tacit knowledge is something that actually a chemist, Polanyi, pushed. But Gilbert Ryle, as an analytical philosopher, had already been making distinction between knowing that and knowing how. And this is, as you were saying, you don't need to know that to have that bodily connection as a carpenter. So I think there's a risk at times of thinking that there's a bag of stuff called phenomenology that could be important to design, and just think that nothing else ever happened in 20th century thought. And I think the other interesting thing is, if you actually look at the thought that most influenced design across the 20th century, it was rationalist thought. It was systems theory. So you had people at Bauhaus at the same time as Heidegger, and that's not where they were looking. And I think there's interesting questions to ask as to why, and right up to Herb Simon, when people were looking for a theoretical basis for design, what was the attraction of rationalism? Why were they going for that? And why were they ignoring phenomenology?
I have a comment to this.
Yeah.
One thing is, first of all, that this computer man versus machine, computer versus people discussion. This is very central to Dreyfus. How would I start this? And he's the main opponent of Simon's, and Simon believes that people are computers, rule-following computers, whatever. This discussion actually have started, in my opinion, around 60 years before, but people don't know that. It is actually precisely the difference between Wittgenstein's first period and his later periods. Because the point is that when you have a syntax, a formal syntax, you have to interpret in the world. You have to give it some contents if you want that it works in the world. And well, the simple way to doing this is to use mathematical, model sets or something like that. But if you are with real world, then you have to have concepts. And this was the problem Wittgenstein started to solve during his late period. He wanted to understand what are meanings and what are concepts and how they are organized. And he has several periods in that. But the point is actually that Simon doesn't ask this question at all. He don't want to ask it, but he has his own way of looking. The Dreyfus says that it's impossible to answer that question, which is, to be very accurate, I must say that his first book was about proving that chess-playing computers can't beat chess players, which doesn't sound very good at the moment.
It's at least outdated.
Yeah. So what I would like to see this problem is actually that we develop machines, as we have developed ever since Stone Age, to replace some human capacities so that they can help people in doing something. At the moment, we work with machines which have much higher information processing capacities, and this is why, for example, Simon's metaphor of mind is very good. But the problem really is that the tacit knowledge and how we can conceptualize the tacit knowledge. We know that people get it by training, they train you when you train over 10 years and you live in a good training environment, you learn quite good skills normally, and depends of course your devotion and motivation and that kind of things. But this is very rational and this is normal. The problem is that every psychologist of skill, which is expertise, know that people who are skilled, they don't know actually why they are skilled. Yeah. If you go and ask, I asked once Robert Hübner, who used to be best Western European chess player, that why are you so good? And he thought very long and said, okay, I have played a lot with strong players. He had no idea. And this De Groot, who was one of the beginner, the first expertise researchers in the world, Dutch psychologist, he noticed this already in the 40s. Now the problem is that those people nevertheless have to find some concepts to understand their tacit knowledge. And often it can be metaphorical, and in fact I don't see any reason that why phenomenology wouldn't, some phenomenological concepts like everyday life or sorge or whatever, they wouldn't make possible. As you know, this is my last comment here. This point is that this metaphorical language is extremely important in design, and I learned it from a student with whom I had to argue 1 hour, actually even more, I'm afraid, that agents, agent technologies in web, internet agents, they are not living beings. But he believed so strongly that particular metaphor that it is, and this shows that how difficult. But this agent concept of agents show that how difficult it is for designers to find something, some terms, so that they could discuss within each other, because they can't discuss internet agents saying that they have to have words for that, which they share, and shared meanings to communicate.
I don't agree with that. I believe in the kunst ligt in de haveling tussen woorden, so the art lies in the silences between the words. So that's why he's a designer, because he uses visuals, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong from my perspective. Look, my problem here, and this is the motivation from my side, to put this kind of discussion among us or on the table is I am operating as a scientist in an academic environment called Technical University of Eindhoven or Eindhoven University of Technology, whatever you like to call it, and my main output I'm judged on, and my colleagues as well, are something like publications or written text or diagrams or whatever, which feeds into a universal archive of all knowledge compilation contributed. And if I cannot express the essence of design in publications, what in our hell I'm doing here? How can I teach people, without to be an honest scientist and teacher, to educate the students here in an academic way? Today we had graduates, they got their master diploma from our department, and if it is all about, luckily I guess it's not, but skills, skills and training to skills, it's a totally different type of educational system, and we are challenged by that. Gilbert.
Do you have to describe all of design? I mean, is this comment to my left again about the gaps? I mean, if a lot of skilled behaviour is tacit, you will never get a full description. So, whether it's phenomenology, whatever tradition we're drawing on, to accept that there is tacit knowledge and there are human phenomena beyond language, why not just accept that? Yeah. Why not just accept that and have accounts of design that leave the gaps in? Just like a cartoon, as good as between the frames.
But it is true, and it will always be tacit. Yeah. But the point is that we explicate a lot of tacit knowledge. For example, in Finnish language, the number of abstract words has hugely risen since 1600. And it means that we conceptualize also issues, and this conceptualizing is a good thing. And something, people made pottery some time ago, that the kind of pottery that everybody is nowadays familiar when they go to IKEA, wherever they are, in Beijing or in Pittsburgh or somewhere in England and so on. But they created a style. They had not even name for the style. And then they invented that, okay, this is Scandinavian style. And, well, somebody can say that IKEA is Scandinavian style, but its basic idea is that. But they had a lot of metaphors and norms. For example, they explained that Scandinavian design compared to mansion style, which is, British pottery. And so they said that it's democratic. It has nothing to do with democracy, but they simply use very, very straight lines and straight type things. But that metaphor gave them idea about what they were doing, and they could communicate with each other. Still, a lot of communication was totally tacit. My first PhD student was architect, and I wondered when the architect says to each other that this form swims inside the other one. But of course, if they have, this in their eyes, this model, they can understand what the other one speaks. I probably can't. And it is the same that you have huge theory about music and art, and even Thomas Mann's novels, you have institutes studying that and explicating what you can find there. So that is a part of the movement. And the other part is, of course, this intuition. But intuitions can be explicated, and very large part of our understanding of world is actually that we explicate our intuitions. We make them verbal, and we discuss together. We analyze them more accurately. We make sub-concepts. For example, okay, we can speak without grammar, but grammar is not a bad thing to have.
If I understand your point correctly, then actually the discussion is not about the relationship between design and phenomenology, but about the relationship between phenomenology and science, right?
Partially. Yeah? I mean, phenomenology, as it was presented in the movie, according to my understanding, pretty straightforward, was considered to be an alternative to rationalism in a certain way coming from the past. Yeah? To capture the world in a representational format, from Plato with his idea world and whatever, and then everything unfolds in a way that it's in a rational manner can be captured. And that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. No? And phenomenology tries to bring us back to reality. That's and try to convince us there is more than just a kind of representation, reflection, or mirroring, which alienates us from reality as such. And that was also part of his Heidegger's, late Heidegger, trying to understand what are the waves of world systems or ontologies to look to all these kind of theoretical framings. And I mean, for me, why you could also take a metaphysical stance here in the sense, why is phenomenology so popular nowadays? So what is the purpose? And the simple answer from my point could be, I'm not saying so, but could be, because modern economies, Western economies, are challenged to hell to survive. And the only answer we have is we have to innovate, to become more whatever designerish and sell these ideas to the rest of the world, because the production and all these things are already gone, and phenomenology is very practical to feed into this kind of conceptualization. But this is not what I get out of it. That's maybe just a practical or political critical side mark or footnote. No?
I have a comment to this. I think that there is totally different reason why phenomenology is important, and it is that both philosophy.
Against.
Sorry. I
Should
told them,
understand.
I said in the beginning that I try to, see what is rational in phenomenology.
Go ahead.
So why it is so popular? It is that there is a big gap in theories of human mentality at the moment, and it is the big gap is that we don't discuss mental contents. We don't discuss what we think. We say that people have thoughts, but abstract thought is not a thought. And phenomenology goes a little bit, towards that direction. Myself, I have started to quite much work with the idea that we have mental contents, and the contents of our thoughts and our mental representations actually explains a lot what we do. I mean, every day, since this is very simple. If I ask it, where are you going, and the other person says that I'm going to shop, I don't have any causal theory that why he is here. He's just going ahead and going to shop. But thinking our creative processes, it's extremely important to start studying the concrete, complex mental contents. For example, this is the last thing, the last comment is that, think for example Rutherford, what he saw little marks in the photographic plate, but he concluded there a lot about what atoms are like, and later on these same abstract things, have done more and more and further of physics. And sometimes comes, something good like nuclear power stations, and something less good like nuclear bombs. But nevertheless, the contents, the ideas, the models of how things which we can't see, no one has ever seen, or probably now in microscope, but nevertheless, those things, how we organize, the world around us by combining complex things. And this is, I think, very close. This is science, but this is close to what people in designing complex technical artifacts, for example, do. And this is why we should do. The key issue is that phenomenology is the only conceptual metaphor or tool really discussing a little bit about these issues.
Okay, you first and then second on that.
I find it interesting how many times you use the word think and thought in the way that you speak. And I think it's, I think and I feel that you say people do not tell what they think. Why do people not tell what they think? Because we do not have words very often to reflect what we feel. And I think why phenomenology is interesting, at the same time Buddhism and mindfulness, yoga, meditation, is because people search for a new living in the reality. We have created a world in the 90s and beyond where we have so many attachments to things, to people all the time, while the only law there is in the universe is the law of impermanence, anicca they call it, anicca, the law of impermanence, and we are holding on to things while we are almost going off the edge of a waterfall, and we're causing ourselves so much pain doing that. So that's why it's very difficult for us. We search for a new authenticity and a new of looking at the reality as it is.
No, I agree on that totally, because for me that was also part of the message in the movie, and that's strongly related to phenomenology.
But is that the only way to ask that what is the best way of living? I mean, Dreyfus said something very nasty about Plato, but truth is that Socrates says, written down by Plato or invented by Plato, who knows, but the point is that he said that what is the more important question that a man can ask than how to live this life. And so it means that actually these issues, there are enormous amount of ways of asking these questions, and they have been asked, and it's very good to discuss that. But the point is that what will be the theoretical and empirical conceptualization of our time for what is the right way of living, and what it is as an individual solution, what is it as a social solution, what is it as a global solution. There are no easy answers to this kind of questions, and phenomenology is one way of looking at it. Nietzsche might be another way.
Would you like to say something?
No, I would like to hear
Okay,
his
then,
question.
yeah, okay, please.
So I think the discussion is quite much on the theoretical content of phenomenology itself, and I would really like to hear some more about the implications for design. So I think my question is twofold. So if it's really important to do and experience, why do companies set up design projects based on talking? And my second question is, if it's tacit knowledge that's hard to communicate, does it make design as an individual activity more interesting and easier to do?
To start with your second question, for the simple reason that I don't have an answer for your first one.
To buy some thinking time.
Yes, I think as a designer, if you are able to rely on your own skills, not depending on formalizing your tacit knowledge, you definitely make your decisions on your own intuition, and you probably don't have to rely on others. The danger indeed is that you might make decisions on your own skill that are not quite near what the user desires. So in that sense, I do understand that you need to get a feeling from the perspective of the user. To come to your first question, implications for design, I think that phenomenology and other post-cognitivist approaches, they have been coined in the last decades, first in academia, but I'm not sure if they actually already reached industry yet. So in that sense, I think it takes a bit of time before concepts from phenomenology are being caught up. First of all, because Doris is writing, for example, in Phenomenology for Design. It is an eye-opener for most people because the phenomenological perspective is challenging the status quo. It gives a different perspective on how people engage with products, and the meaning is not out there, but it's in interaction. He, in his book, Where the Action Is, I think he pretty clearly states the ambitions and the potential that Merleau-Ponty and Schutz in the intersubjective parts have. But if you then actually look at the examples that he gives, they are all quite cognitive. They are all. He gives industrial examples, and those examples, I don't think they are actually made from a phenomenological perspective. Phenomenology is a way of looking at the world, and it's in a way you try to describe with it how phenomena are. It's a different way of looking at the same thing, and it's not by definition changing what you're looking at. I mean, the objective truth is there. You just take a subjective point of view, and if it's phenomenological point of view, it might give you different insights than another point of view. If you start, I think that phenomenology serves in multiple ways, in that it tries to describe the world from a bodily perspective. If you look from Merleau-Ponty, that your body takes an active role in perception and action is an active role in the creation of meaning, you can accept it like, well, my body is skillful enough to cope with difficulties. My body is skillful enough to learn how to type, even though the writing is a very cognitive process. After a while I can type blindly. I don't even look at my hands anymore. I can program. It's a cognitive activity. At a certain moment I don't program the code, but I program my intentions. So I embody, in a way, the language. So that's a descriptive part, and the excuse might be that because we are, as people, so capable of dealing with complexity, any design is a good design, because we are capable of giving meaning to it anyways. But that, in that sense, I mean, if you design a very complex, hierarchical, structured interface with many buttons that you have to learn, yes, it's difficult, but after a while using it, while interacting with it from the perspective of phenomenology, it will start to make sense to you and you will be able to use it. But I would like to take phenomenology a bit further, in the sense that it's not only descriptive, like, well, meaning emerges in interaction, but that the role of the body is also directive in what you design. So, for my feeling, if I design something, I like to look at skills of people, and bodily skills, and how people act, perceptual motor skills, and how people feel, emotional skills, next to the cognitive skills, because I think that in most products that we see around us, they demand a lot of our thinking, they demand a lot of our cognitive skills. Yes, we can learn how to deal with those complexities, but most products underuse our feelings. They underuse that we actually have hands and that they are more than able to deal with buttons. I mean, they can do more than just a button. A button is a very cognitive on-off. It's a very discrete on-off, but in a way it forgets that my hand can actually, when I press, it has more than just on-off. I mean, it has a direction. It has a feeling, and in a way, I think that if you look at phenomenology in a way for design, that you also consider that we have other skills, that we have feelings, that you can come to products that also allow people to engage with products in a way that you can engage with your music instrument. That you can actually engage with it, that you can express yourself. And I think that's maybe what phenomenology opens up to, that your body is important.
Okay, that was an answer
Yeah.
to your question. Are you satisfied so far?
It is an answer.
It is an answer.
It is an answer.
One out of so many others.
Yeah.
Do you have another one?
I wonder if Jelle or anyone else has a pointer for the big companies to start embracing an approach that includes phenomenology. So, is there something to start from? What advice would you give?
The first advice is not to use the word phenomenology.
I had to.
Yes. Yeah, your story is, I think, quite close getting to my question actually. But, a while ago I read lectures of Richard Feynman. He's a physicist, and he starts his talks with the phenomenon of gravity and electricity, and these are phenomena that existed, sort of, the source of their existence is probably before us. I think the type of phenomenology we are talking about is a phenomenon that didn't exist before us. So, for example, we want to create tools for people to create something. But yeah, you could call this innovation or craftsmanship or something. But yeah, how can we? Is the purpose of phenomenology to describe something that sort of doesn't exist yet or could emerge or something? This is a question for everyone. I don't know. I think that's the I think that's the purpose of it, but I have no idea how to describe such a process.
Would you like to react to it, or
Well, both.
no?
But let me. So now I can take the critical role. Finally,
Yes.
one thing is that the issue of emotions is not at all strange in current human technology interaction design. There is a huge and very much company-driven movement called user experience research. And of course you can do user experience research phenomenologically, but myself I think that we actually have to when we do design solutions, we have to have rational reasons to say that why this solution works and why this solution probably doesn't work. And then we need to go back to science and we need to go back to explaining. We have tried to develop concepts which we call explanatory design. I mean, engineering design, technical engineering design is explanatory design. People don't first build a bridge and then look at, okay, it collapsed, so let's try some other solution. This is the way interfaces have been done. A second thing is that we have usability research, ergonomics, and that set of which are very cognitively oriented traditions. Basic question is that can people use, or how people can best use the technology? The user experience questions, do people like to use? And they are very, very heavily involved in company strategies, at least in Finland, so heavily that actually one of the reasons why Nokia went so bad it went was that they paid all attention to user experience when they should have actually paid attention to what for people use technologies. And this later we call life-based design or designing for life issue. But we have for these phenomenological questions very rational-based, psychology-based, sociology-based, human research-based traditions which are existing and they are in company agenda. Still, I think that phenomenology can raise issues, but which are new. One final thing is that I would like to ask people that what has troubled me a long time, and I asked many times this question: that is it right that we teach students and we learn ourselves, which is the most important thing in teaching students, and students learn things and they go to industry, they are specialized in design. So why should they go and ask people, like in co-design, which is very familiar now, go and ask people that how this object, how this form of life, how this thing should be designed. Isn't it the duty or skill of the designers to take responsibility and say that this is the way life should go and we have to have this kind of things to do and do them? And one thing...
Something directly back to that?
Yeah.
So it's the designer's job to sort of write a script for person's life?
I mean, they have to understand other people. That is the key issue. The main thing is that you understand what the people are. Psychology is science about what is this person outside me.
Like. For me, it's even more than that. Yeah, you have to envision future life of humans.
Yeah.
And any design, whatever, either it's just a copy of what exists and we are used to, then it doesn't add or it doesn't change anything. But anything you come up with something different, which is not used to, or people are not familiar with, you challenge people to learn, to adapt to acquire a way to make sense out of it or give it meaning or meaning back. In large scale, designers are designing not only product, but also the future society and the life of human beings. And without knowing that you are doing so, And without having a kind of normative stance, you can't. You just fiddle around.
Actually,
I think that's quite common sense. I think only the difference in opinion is.
Whoa, you wouldn't tell me. I mean, I can go through this department, yeah? And some of the people would definitely deny that. Some of people say, yeah, agree. And then nothing happens. I mean, you have to make up your mind to say, this is what I think people or society should go to. And then not saying so as a motivation. Most of the students I was engaged with as a coach, yeah, they have this prime motivation to do something better or something good for society. But if you ask them, what exactly do you mean? Difficult.
Yeah,
difficult.
Okay, the point that I was trying to make is that I think the path that people take to get towards this understanding of other people, to get to a better, take a stand in for a better future, I think the path is different from like doing like rational psychological analysis or doing a co-design sessions, and you pinpoint the co-design sessions as a sort of giving away responsibility that you have as a designer. And I think it's interesting. I don't know if you want to add something to that, but
yes, I do.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys.
Gilbert is first.
Oh,
But if he's a gentleman, then you pass through.
I'm going to show my age to the question at the back. Why aren't there any groups in industry? Well, there was. Contextual design came out of a Heidegger reading group. Digital, they went bust. Hermeneutics, very soon afterwards, was a big focus for Xerox PARC and Europark in particular. That got closed. Lucy Suchman's group at Xerox PARC was very, very focused on ethnomethodology. That got closed down. I think one of my concerns about having a focus on one area of human thought is that it almost goes against the very nature of what design is about. So
impermanence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Impermanence.
So that there are just so many intellectual traditions that you could put together everything that's been said about phenomenology this evening from things that are already mainstream in design. Effective design, embodied design, soma aesthetics. I think the advantage for phenomenology, for people that don't know anything about Western thought in the 20th century, it might be a quick way, like a selection box, a gift pack of putting it all together. But I think the danger is that when you start talking about phenomenology, you talk as if this is new. Not just in terms of design, but also intellectually, because Marx talked about the sensuous nature of being. And that was 100 years before Heidegger. So, you know, in terms of the history of ideas, there is nothing in phenomenology that isn't already in place earlier. Romanticism, early Marxism. And I think the only attraction of phenomenology is the way it packages something up. But it actually still misses a lot out, particularly what was coming on before, languaging, concepts, idealism. And these are just as important to design as sensuality and emotion.
Do you support our contra position?
I would add that to my arsenal as a designer, yes. But the thing to do is to be a magpie, you know, it's bricolage. You take from everywhere possible. You don't subscribe to one body of thought and exclude everything else.
It becomes devotional. And
Yes, it does, yeah. Or closed, as
closed. Keep clean.
Pertti and then you.
I would like to raise one additional issue. When Matthias said that people are silent, the problem I see that why people are silent is that wrong people solve, you know, right problems, and actually they don't solve it. Let me explain. Human life is based, you know, something like, you know, social sciences, humanists, psychologists. I mean, part of psychologists and so on. But the point is that in essence, engineering tradition, because engineers are the key moving force of design, and then you get other people, computer scientists and other people, they have very strong natural scientific education. And this natural scientific education makes that they are without tools of thought when they should start, you know, solving problems. And okay, are engineers now the guilty ones? They are the humanists who don't, want to hear any word that is doing with technology. Technology is bad, point. And I don't care. So it means that people who had concept skills don't have idea that they should design something. And instead I had the student who made us user experience thesis, and then she went back to art history and started to study what Edward Munch had, had his meal in certain day in his diaries and so on and so on. The problem is that we should somehow, get those two groups of people to talk to each other, because it's pointless. It's pointless that engineers who are not, experts in human mental life, so to say, that they have to solve that, because they have much better things to do to make technologies that really work and which are reliable and which can be used something. So this is we live in a sort of sort of edge of going towards something, and I see that phenomenology has a sort of good to do in that respect. It's part of the actually one final phenomenological argument. The concept one of the concepts I really like in phenomenology is discourse, because this is what our field nowadays are. It is full of different discourses or language games in Wittgensteinian sense. We live in a sea of meanings, and new meanings comes, new ways comes to see, and then somebody like Steve Jobs, who have been enough in the field, sees that okay, this is the right way of people to live. But besides, he was, as everybody knows, that he was actually interested in Eastern way of living ever since beginning, and that you can see in their user experience. But the point is that people in Finland, there are few people who understand that the question was not at all about Apple user experience, but it was very much about how to use technology, how to organize social life around technology. And we don't even know how much it will change our life. Robotics is the next one in my agenda, which will change even more what we do.
Jon, and then I come back to you.
Yeah, I had this question, but I forgot.
So then we can pass through to this lady.
I remember a point that
What?
Pertti made at the beginning, and I think I will come to your point. Is I will very much agree with it. Is that you said something like you mentioned phenomenology, and then later you mentioned traditional psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So phenomenology seems to be something new, and
yeah, they are not psychologists at all.
or there's no psychology, but this was phenomenology, and then something traditional. It seems this is modern or fashionable. And I don't like that very much, because phenomenology, the way that phenomenology look at the phenomena, that that the world exists in the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a very old idea.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands of years when the Buddhism started, when the Buddhas sitting under the tree.
Okay.
That what he got.
So you
and
got
he tried
your
to tell everybody, see, the world exists in your experience, in your reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And reflection also changes, and the world changes. So in Buddhism, there's a lot of ways of saying now. Actually, there's no actually word about now, because if you say now, it refers to time. And then there's a lot of ways of saying the moment. In Buddhism, there's a huge amount of ways of saying the moment. Actually, emphasize your experience at that moment. And I think that's true when Buddha was sitting on the tree. And I think that was great. But nowadays, after the Buddha, there were a lot of trees growing. And people invented a lot of things. We're living in a world that invented by ourselves, which is beyond our experience. I'll give you an example. Try to use your bodily skills to design for internet. How do we experience internet as internet?
Yeah, that's a good question. Jelle?
I think
Now
you
your
should,
challenge. Or?
I think you should pick your. As any perspective, you pick your perspective that fits best with your purpose.
Oh, I don't buy that argument. Because then I don't have a standpoint. I just jump around. For now, I work for that theory. For now, I work for this exists. For that, I use 1 plus 1 is 2. For that, I use 1 plus 1 is 3 because the situation changes. Where is your standing point?
No, I lost track here.
Can I make a very
Yes, you
brief
can
comment
short,
to you?
and then
This is very short. Can you learn to use internet if you don't use your hands?
No, not another question. Can you learn internet without using that?
Well, yes, if you consider it.
Yeah.
And you use
Voice
it.
search already, like a
No, the challenge was to Jelle, I guess, and the panelists, how to design for abstract concepts like information flows and then cloud, whatever, yeah. And if you insist on touching with your hands and doing something embodied, yeah.
Seeing it with your eyes, hearing it with your ears, touching with your hand. How do you do that with internet?
You can.
Oh,
Yeah.
tell us.
Well,
The
Well-
internet.
Huh?
what is that?
No, now you have to be concrete.
But
I
it's
mean, that was a
about-
trick, no? If you have a
It's
very
about
abstract
being
concept and you can...
aware.
Huh?
It's about being aware. You know, how do you click that mouse? How do you move your eyes? Are you aware of your sensations? That, for me, then you experience the reality. You can also be mindful when you touch your phone. I think it's you can design an object as nice as you want, but if somebody doesn't treat that object with a certain awareness of their sensation,
There's also another.
you could so it's about awareness. So I think a good phenomenologist would be a good Buddhist, because then you can really start to design things or see things, and this is what I wanted to. Sorry for.
There's been lots of design work that's made the internet physical. So there's Natalie Jovijenko's spinning sculpture at Xerox Park that was reflecting the network. There's the Manhattan project at Microsoft Cambridge, which is trying to make search physical. I mean, the first step is if you want to deal with something physical, make it physical. And then at that point it becomes embodied. And the reason why that, Natalie did that sculpture of Ethernet behaviour and that Microsoft Cambridge are looking at physical search is to make something that's currently very cognitive, to give it an embodied form that allows you to interact physically with it. So.
But doesn't the internet influence the way we talk, the way we touch things, the way our eyes move? It is a physical experience.
Nobody
So
denies.
why are we so attached to
Nobody denies that.
Yeah.
The challenge was how to change and how to design for in the intentional way to do something different or achieve something different if you only are allowed to use your hands or something like that.
No,
Pertti.
Yeah, the problem I see is that from my conceptual point of view, which is not phenomenological, but extended traditional cognitive psychology, I'm not going to details, but the point is that we have mental representations of the world. Part of these mental representations are subconscious. Part of those mental representations are conscious. We have in these mental contents, we have concepts that we cannot even principles see actually, and which our motor movements are totally irrelevant. For example, I give you a sentence that, okay, I possibly tomorrow go home. Can I perceive it now? Can anybody perceive does Pertti tomorrow go home? Can you perceive it?
Yeah.
But if I die before, how can you perceive?
No, that's the point taken.
The point is that we have to perceive. We have to understand that our
envision
way
the
of
future only through
envisioning
abstract
world is
representational
extremely
concepts.
complex, and a lot in the internet is hugely complex system because we can do it, and computing we can interact with computing in so many ways and so many different, There are people like nanotechnologists who probably have something to do with computers. I don't care, but they make my life better because screens are nicer, and so on. But these huge mental representations which have nothing to do with anything sensory motor, because sensory motor, you have to have first sensory motor level, but then you have human beings have things that have nothing to do with sensory or motor. You know, we can understand what is infinite. We can understand, of course.
Now,
To
some people
degree.
claim to do so.
Yeah. Have you been in Guangzhou?
In what?
Guangzhou
Maybe.
in China. It's a city in China, 10 million people or something like this. Anyway, if I explain you that that is a little city, you have never been there, but you still can represent it. And if you get in internet an announcement that there is very interesting conference in Guangzhou and you decide to go there and so on, you see that our representatives, we have to take representations very seriously, to go really details and analyze. And this is something I don't like in phenomenology, especially in Heidegger. Those concepts are so simple. I mean, of course, you know, emotions and cognitions are related. There is even name for that process that how our emotions affect our cognitions and you can use. So the point is that it's possible to explicate these basic phenomenological questions in design science and especially designing human aspect of it. It's quite possible to explicate them much more effective tools than you know with what phenomenology can offer. Of course, there is nothing wrong in phenomenology in the sense that it can be used, as I said, it can be used to get inspiration, but you have to prove them, and often proofs are quite complicated. You must understand, there is a field called neuroergonomics. In neuroergonomics, it is very difficult that you, by looking at your internal states, you know, you start seeing that where are the activations and how they make sense, these activations, brain activations, and how your eyes take, what are the limits of, what is the limit of taking new information, how much, what is the response time. And then if you are looked something, you know, you have to change your gaze from one moment to another. These are also very important knowledge in designing, solving certain kind of design knowledge. But this is not reachable if you just look your own phenomena. You have to go beyond that.
Yep. Directly back to that, or
Boring people.
no? Because there was another one.
Is that directly
Yes.
related?
Yeah, please.
Yeah?
Are
Okay.
you saying that if you take a phenomenological approach to design, you should also take a phenomenological approach to validation? Because that seems conflicting, right? You can take a step back and use traditional approaches for validating.
No, actually I say that if you get a nice inspiration, a good idea on the ground of phenomenology, for example, Heidegger's concept of everyday life, which I think is lovely and rich, you have to work to fine-tune that conception so that it really works in life. And in that you normally need empirical methods. And one key issue what we need is explanation. Explanation means that we can answer why this works. And this is a problem with phenomenology, that it's impossible to say that why this solution works. And why is very important question, because it combines all the individual truths in science into a complex system in which, you know, one truth supports another, another truth supports another.
Pertti,
Yeah.
I don't think that anybody here object or denies the power of rationality. I guess all of us agrees on that. But some of us at least, yeah, feel that this is not all. There's something beyond that which we cannot capture at all in a rationality approach. And then the question is, how in God hell can we capture something in a way we are used to and only used to have a rational view on it? That's something totally weird to me and totally ununderstandable.
I don't see any problem in that.
No, of course, if
in
you
the long run
bounce it
we
back
can
into rationality,
conceptualize
then
things. We conceptualize things. and we make concepts, we explicate things, we conceptualize them, and we get new ground for our thinking step by step. But I'm sure that
Pertti,
we never
you start-
solve everything. I stop.
You started with your critique to the movie when you said you don't like the mystification of certain things.
Yes.
And if you take the rationality as a large-scale way of zeitgeist, then everything which is surprising, something which is mystical, disappears. And if there is something left, we abandon it as something, as an accident in our worldview. It shouldn't happen because we can't explain it.
Yeah. But that is also
So that's my
the
stance
lack
here.
of faith we have. You know, we used to see a volcano and see it erupt and say, "Oh my God, it's a god that caused this crazy volcano. How cool!"
Yep.
And now we say, "Oh, there are these particles in the air that cause the whole Earth to cool down." What does it? Does that add or subtract to the experience of beauty of that? It's like saying with love, for example. Let's figure out the physiological, biochemical processes of love. Does that really add to the experience of it?
It destroys it.
It actually destroys it. Exactly. So that's why
For me,
intellectualizing.
it was a good argument to this gentleman. Yeah,
Yes, yeah, because
Orgasm.
mystification,
giving
thank
up
God,
any
that
kind
really,
of boundary.
If we figure out everything, then what are we here for? They're absolutely, those mysteries are there to be felt, not to be rationalized or understood cognitively. And that's why I would like to also comment back on the co-design thing. There is a way for you to, because you keep on saying that because phenomenology doesn't really work because it's only about your own experience or your own bodily experience.
Mhm.
Well, actually, what I've experienced with meditation, for example, is that when you become more aware in yourself, you also become more aware of others, and it becomes even more and more nuanced. But you're also you also understand the law of impermanence, which means that you are not attached to people. So then you get to selfless love, that you can look at that person and ask them, what do you need, in a way that you are not attached to them or attached to design or attached to whatever school of thought. That is the way that you can do co-design or whatever you want to call it, in a way that is actually effective. Because if you're just attached to the word co-design and you think you're just co-designing for the sake of it itself. Sorry, I'll shut up. Sorry.
I have a direct comment. Actually, love is nothing that psychology has not conceptualized. And following your theme, there was Milton Erickson who developed thought therapy, and he said that he conceptualized love, saying that there are three kinds of loves, and that makes very much understandable, at least to me, about some aspects, not the whole phenomenon. And first of all, there is love that I love that person because it raises my status so much. Okay, I love this person because she does what I want. Or I love this person, let's say now a woman, from my point of view. I love because her happiness makes me happy. There are different type of conceptualizations of love, and this makes it, for example, in psychotherapy, this kind of conceptualizations make it easier for therapists to teach people to understand about how they live and how they experience. And this is why there is nothing wrong in rationality. I'm not troubled actually that there are things I don't know. I believe there are quite many things I don't know.
That's very rational.
Yeah. So why should I worry about? Matthias, your worry is totally no.
No, I have a very practical worry. I mean,
Okay.
how long shall we continue here? I mean, the time is ticking. Huh?
Tomorrow morning we get kicked out.
No, but I mean, no. There is a clear deadline. 11 p.m. is a kind of hard deadline. Then even our passport does not work to get out of this building. But what was our schedule here? Can you remember, Jelle?
I think it would be about now.
Yeah?
to answer.
Yeah.
Okay, are there any urgent questions or comments from your side? Okay.
What is love?
Just rewind.
Yeah.
Okay, final answer of our panelist.
Yeah. Who has the iPhone?
Jelle,
And look
Jelle.
from Wikipedia.
You have to feel it.
Alright.
Okay, that's the answer. Pertti.
Yeah, but how do you know that? How do you know that that feeling is love? It can be. Feelings are not. It's not at all easy for a human being be in good relation to with feelings. You probably there is something called alexithymia, which is very common among programmers, for example, and it means that you don't have words for feelings, and this is why you know. But from my point of view, I gave you already the idea. The idea is that if there is a person whose happiness makes me happy, he's either my friend or my true love.
Okay, my answer is very simple, and you could get. I refer back to the movie. They referred to a tradition which came from Africa, the dancing tradition together, and they were saying as the Islamic tradition when they said Allah, Allah, Allah. In the way they got into a kind of synchronization state, and then you enter a moment of mind where you are unified with your environment. You lost the feeling of being an individual. And then it moved into Spain, and then it turned into Olé. And in the movie it was at the end of the flamenco dancer, when the singer, the old one, was also saying Olé, because it was a kind of expression that he enjoyed very much, that this kind of connection among them in that situation happened. And if you have with someone else, at least someone else, this kind of, then it's close to life. Okay. I would thank you very much for staying so long with us, and I hope you had some experience you could take home with you, and I assume that we will continue with this kind of Tuesday or Thursday night talks, at least maybe once a month. That was just the first one, so you are the virgins to make it happen. And I would like to thank you very much to our panelists, and I have some gifts left. Okay, then this is for you. Thank you. And this is for you. And thank you very much. Okay. Now you're released.